What is going on, everyone? My name is Jamon McKinney, but of course, you can just call me Juice because that is my nickname. Welcome, everyone, to the Juice Alert, the latest edition of the show. If you have not subscribed to the Juice Alert already, be sure to do that right about now. You will not regret it. You can, of course, find the Juice Alert on YouTube as well as podcasting platforms. That includes Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that great stuff. If you enjoy the show, be sure to leave the show a like. Also, be sure to leave the show a good rating and review if you're listening on podcasting platforms. These things definitely help me out right here on the show. Today, I have a stacked lineup for you guys of great topics to talk about. 5 topics in total today. We are going to do 5 different top 10 lists. I'm going to rank the 10 greatest football players of all time. I'm going to rank the 10 best football players playing in the NFL right now for you guys. This, of course, is heading into the 2022-2023 NFL season. I'm going to rank the top 10 quarterbacks of all time. I'm going to rank the top 10 basketball players of all time. I'm also going to talk about the 10 greatest hitters of all time in Major League Baseball history. I'm sorry, pitchers, you guys don't get a segment today. I will say in the future, though, if you guys continue to rock with me, you will see me at some point make a top 10 list ranking the greatest pitchers to ever play the game of Major League Baseball. I will say, though, I am super, super pumped to be back right here putting out great things for you guys on this show. I took a very, 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 very long break from this show. However, it was a much needed break, a break that allowed me to get a different perspective on life, to really find myself as a person, to continue to grow as a human being, to experience great things. And really from this point going forward, I'm just looking to build that momentum into producing great shows for you guys. I'm going to build off that momentum that I got from that long break, and I'm going to transfer that energy to you, the people out there. Okay, so that's great. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I will say I apologize for being away for so long, but at the same time, I don't apologize because selfishly, I want to live my life the way I want to live it. I shouldn't say I did. I have been working at a new job for quite some time, and I'm finally really getting adjusted to that job. I'm loving that job. I work at a news station right now, and I will be graduating from college very, very soon as well. So that's definitely a plus for me. But yeah, let's get right into the show. So I'm going to kick things off by ranking the 10 greatest football players of all time for you guys today. Now, when it comes to how I made this list right here, I took everything into account. I think that my criteria for you guys is going to be very crystal clear based off of the list that I'm going to provide for you guys right here. So I don't want to waste any more time. The greatest football player of all time, number 1 is Tom Brady. Number 2 is Jerry Rice. Number 3 is Lawrence Taylor. Number 4, Deion Sanders. Number 5, Jim Brown. Number 6, Joe Montana. Number 7, Reggie White. Number 8, Calvin Johnson. Number 9, Anthony Munoz. Number 10, Ray Lewis. So before I do get to this actual list, the one guy that just missed the list was Bruce Smith. I will talk about him at the very end of the segment, but I want to go 1 through 10, and let's get right to it. So the greatest football player of all time is Tom Brady. Tom Brady has had a 22-year career up to this point. He's been the model of consistency. He's the most accomplished football player of all time. If you want to go off the statistics, well, Tom Brady wins that argument. Most touchdown passes ever, most yards ever thrown by a quarterback, most touchdowns ever point blank, period, I might add. Not just touchdowns from a quarterback, touchdowns ever, okay? Most Super Bowl wins, most Super Bowl appearances, not just among quarterbacks, but among players in NFL history. Keep in mind, people, there have only been 56 Super Bowls in the history of the NFL. Tom Brady has played in 10 of those Super Bowls. That's astonishing. Tom Brady is not the most talented quarterback to ever live. To me, that title goes to Aaron Rodgers. And maybe you want to throw in Dan Marino and Patrick Mahomes in that conversation as well. That's fine. But when it comes to evaluating your entire body of work and who's the greatest football player ever, and not only the greatest football player ever, if we're just strictly talking quarterbacks, talent is not the only thing you can take into account. Okay, now let me just defend Tom Brady right here, because I think from a talent perspective, Tom Brady is very, very underrated. I can make the argument that Tom Brady has the most underrated arm in NFL history. From an arm strength perspective, I think he's very, very slept on. Tom Brady can rear back that 95-mile-per-hour fastball and fit the football into tight windows when need be. He's been doing it his entire career, people, and it has produced a lot of darn good results. The most touchdowns ever, the most Super Bowl wins ever. I mean, the results speak for themselves. Not to mention, Tom Brady is one of the most accurate quarterbacks ever. The ability to place the football really wherever he wants to, more times than not. He ranks among the best of them. Tom Brady is a pinpoint accurate thrower of the football. There's very few quarterbacks that I would say are more consistently accurate throwers of the football than Tom Brady in NFL history. Okay? Not to mention, he has an argument for being one of, if not the smartest quarterback to ever play the game of football. There's a debate between him and Peyton Manning, probably. Drew Brees is up there. Rodgers is up there as well. But I think Tom Brady ranks very high, okay? And not to mention, in the biggest moments, Tom Brady consistently elevated under pressure and got it done when the stakes were the highest. I think Tom Brady is by far and away the best football player of all time, at least the greatest football player of all time when we're taking into account everyone's body of work. The fact that he was able to win a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay without Bill Belichick really solidifies this argument that much more. Tom Brady is the greatest football player that has ever lived. Number 2 for me is Jerry Rice. Now, I have Tom Brady ahead of Jerry Rice just because Jerry Rice and Tom Brady have very similar longevity in that both of them played over 20 years and both of them were great until the end. We don't know how Tom Brady is going to look at his final NFL season, but up to this point, Tom Brady, even at age 40 plus years old, Tom Brady is still in the MVP conversation year in and year out. He's still winning Super Bowls, okay? Same thing with Jerry Rice. Jerry Rice was a great player up until he was 40 years old, people. He's a 10-time first-team All-Pro, the most all-time, a 13-time Pro Bowler. He at one point had 11 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He's a 3-time Super Bowl champion and a Super Bowl MVP. He was able to win 1 Super Bowl MVP, like I said. He's the best route runner of all time for my money. He arguably has the best hands ever, meaning he rarely dropped passes. Jerry Rice just always found a way to get open. He's an amazing deep threat. He was unbelievable in the open field, and he's the most productive wide receiver to ever live. But when you tell the story of the NFL, I think Tom Brady has the edge. That's why I have Tom Brady as the greatest football player of all time and not Jerry Rice. But for my money, Jerry Rice is the greatest football player of all time, not named Tom Brady. Number 3 for me is Lawrence Taylor. I understand that Lawrence Taylor only played 13 years in the NFL, which is actually kind of low compared to the Jerry Rices and Tom Brady's of the world. But the guy is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner that is tied for the most ever. He won Defensive Player of the Year as a rookie. He's the last defensive player to win league MVP, which says a lot because not only were they saying was Lawrence Taylor the best defensive player in the league, at one point he was arguably the best player in all football. That was not even up for debate. If it were not for Jerry Rice and Tom Brady coming along, Lawrence Taylor is the greatest football player to ever live, okay? He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 10-time Pro Bowler, 8 times he was first-team All-Pro, and from a talent perspective, I don't think there's an edge rusher out there that comes close to his combination of rare size, speed, burst off the edge, agility, just being an athletic freak. I mean, this guy, he was unbelievable. He's the 3rd greatest football player of all time, in my opinion. Number 4, Deion Sanders. Deion Sanders is by far and away the best cornerback in NFL history. He was so fluid. He had no weaknesses to his game. An amazing ball hawk, incredible instincts at the cornerback position. He just had a natural feel for how to play corner and unbelievable speed. I think his best trait is his recovery speed and his big play ability, meaning even when Deion Sanders maybe got beat, which was very rare, he was able to recover and make up for that and still break up passes and lock people down. And he's just a big play waiting to happen at defensive back. If you test Deion Sanders over and over again, eventually he'll figure that wide receiver out. He'll figure that quarterback out, and he will make a game-changing play. He did that his entire career. The classic battles, we've seen him face Jerry Rice and Michael Irvin and those guys, and they got him more times than not sometimes because they're great players as well. They get paid big bucks too, but more times than not, Deion Sanders was able to hold his own and even win those battles. He won 2 Super Bowls with the 49ers and Cowboys. He was able to win a Defensive Player of the Year award at some point. At one point in his career, pardon me, I can't talk today. But yeah, Deion Sanders, 4th greatest football player of all time. Now, the number 5 and 6 spot to me, these were heavily debated, in my opinion, okay? I really struggle with this. I put Jim Brown at number 5, and I put Joe Montana at number 6. I gave Jim Brown the slight edge, and by the way, Jim Brown's a running back. Joe Montana's a quarterback. So for all you people saying, oh, you only rank Tom Brady number 1 because he's a quarterback. No, because right here you see I have several players that don't play quarterback that I have ranked ahead of Joe Montana, okay? So Jim Brown, to me, when just comparing him to Joe Montana, their body of work, if I was rating just how high of a level they played when they were playing, I think most years Jim Brown play at a higher level at his position than Joe Montana. That was the deciding factor for me. Most years, Jim Brown was a clear-cut 99 overall player at his position if I were to do a Madden rating. I cannot quite say the same for Joe Montana, although he was close. But Jim Brown, he only played 9 years in the NFL. So again, if you only played like 9 years, you can only go so high on this list. But 8 times in those 9 years, he led the NFL in yards and yards per game at the running back position. 5 times he led the NFL in touchdowns. And he was a 3-time league MVP winner. He won more MVPs than Joe Montana, people. So again, people were not only saying, man, Jim Brown is by far and away the best running back in the NFL when he was playing. They were also saying he's the best player in the NFL. And it wasn't just for 1 or 2 seasons. It was for a good stretch of time. He was arguably the best player in the NFL. Incredible speed in the open field, incredible agility, incredible power. He was just rare. For my money, Jim Brown's the best running back of all time, and he's the 5th greatest football player of all time. Number 6 is Joe Montana, like I said. Up until Tom Brady continued to defy the odds and clearly surpassed Joe Montana several years ago, a lot of people were saying Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback to ever play the game of football. And some people were arguing maybe the best player to ever play the game of football, just because when you're a quarterback, there's a whole lot of value, in terms of the wins and losses and everything like that. I think Joe Montana, one of his best qualities was his leadership, very similar to Tom Brady. He just elevated the players around him, and he continued to defy the odds and elevate under pressure when it mattered most in big postseason games. He had a 15-year career. He was able to win 2 MVPs during that stretch in the regular season, only one of 9 players to win the MVP twice. He's twice led the NFL in touchdowns, twice led the NFL in passer rating. He 5 times led the NFL in completion percentage, so he clearly was one of the most accurate quarterbacks to ever play the game. He had great touch. He just threw an amazing football. It was a very catchable ball. He took the 49ers to 4 Super Bowls as the starting quarterback. He won all 4 of those Super Bowls. In those 4 Super Bowls, 11 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and he even at one point took the Kansas City Chiefs to an AFC Championship game. So it wasn't just, he's surrounded by Jerry Rice, all these great players in San Francisco. No, of course those great players helped him win those Super Bowls, but Joe would have been great anywhere. He's one of the greatest football players to ever play. I have him at number 6, okay? Number 7 for me is Reggie White. So by principle, I have him rated as the 3rd best defensive player to ever walk the planet Earth. He's 2nd all time in sacks, a rare combination of size, power, and speed. He was just a force. on the defensive side of the football. He was a big reason why Brett Favre was able to win the only Super Bowl that he won, because Reggie White was the anchor of that defense. And as good as Brett Favre was, Reggie White was the best player on that Super Bowl winning team. Not to mention, Reggie White was named to 13 All-Pro teams in his career. That is the most all-time at any position. Reggie White, for me, an amazing pass rusher. He has an argument for the top 5. I just think the guys ahead of him, I have 6 guys ahead of him, I think they have better resumes. But Reggie White, he was incredible. Number 8 for me, this is going to be controversial, like I said, but Calvin Johnson, people. Calvin Johnson's the 8th greatest football player of all time as I speak. He's the most talented wide receiver ever. Now, Jerry Rice clearly had way better longevity, and at Jerry Rice's peak, I think that he was just as good as Calvin Johnson. I think Calvin might have the slight edge just because of the physical tools that he provided. Like, he was faster than Jerry Rice. He was bigger than Jerry Rice. I think that he struck a little bit more fear in defenses than Jerry Rice, but the peak level was pretty close, even if you give the edge to Calvin. But even though he wasn't the greatest wide receiver of all time, I have a hard time making an argument for anyone else other than Jerry Rice at his position being better than Calvin Johnson. We've never seen a guy who was 6'5" that had the kind of speed that Calvin Johnson possessed, combined with the incredible hands, the ability to track the football down the field as a deep threat, work the sideline, win 50-50 balls, break tackles in the open field, run routes. Calvin Johnson's an absolute cheat code, people. And I will stand on the fact that he is one of the 10 greatest football players of all time, point blank, period. Very similar to Jim Brown. He only played 9 years in the NFL, but in those 9 years, he was amazing. 7 1,000-yard seasons. He still holds the record for most yards in a single season. Cooper Kupp came very close to breaking that record this past year, but Calvin Johnson still holds the record. He was clearly and by far and away the best wide receiver in the entire NFL, at least for a 5-year stretch, in my opinion. He gets the number 8 spot for me on the greatest football players of all time list. Number 9 is Anthony Munoz, the offensive lineman for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's most known for that. Now, when judging offensive linemen, it was very hard for me when looking at who might make the cut for the top 10. So here are some things I looked at for Anthony Munoz. First of all, he was super duper durable as a player. He only missed 3 games in his career due to injury. He's on the 1980s All-Decade team. He's one of the most athletic offensive linemen to ever play the game of football. Anthony Munoz, among offensive linemen, has the most all-pro selections of all time. When players were voting who was the best at their position, more times than not, Anthony Munoz got the most votes out of any offensive lineman ever, if you're just taking into account all pro selections. I like to look at that more so than Pro Bowls, just because I think Pro Bowls sometimes are dictated by the fan voting and things like that. And it's a good representation, but not the most accurate representation. The first team and second team and third team all-pro selections are really the selections I value the most, because voters are truly voting on who rated the highest at their position. And keep in mind, Larry Allen, who a lot of people would consider maybe to be the greatest offensive lineman of all time. Personally, I have Anthony Munoz, like I just mentioned. He's only got 6 all-pro selections compared to Munoz's 11 all-pro selections, which is the most all-time for an offensive lineman. He was an incredible athlete. He moved around super duper well for his size. I think he's the best offensive lineman of all time, taking everything into account, and I haven't rated as the 9th greatest football player of all time. He nearly had perfect technique. He often ran the no-huddle offense, and sometimes they would even move him to tight end because he was such an athletically gifted player. So for me, he's at number 9. Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis is the 10th greatest football player of all time to me at this moment as I speak. He's the greatest middle linebacker of all time. Now, there might be some middle linebackers out there that are more talented than Ray Lewis, but to me, he has an argument for being the most talented middle linebacker ever, and his resume is the best out of all middle linebackers ever, and his resume is good enough to be in the top 10. A 17-year career, 12 Pro Bowl appearances, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner, a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He was the anchor of one of the greatest defenses of all time, the 2000 Ravens. He holds the NFL record for total tackles, the most solo tackles, and the most tackles in a season. And again, when you're taking into account what a linebacker does, in the end, can you tackle people in the open field? And Ray Lewis, he did that about as good as anyone out there. He had incredible leadership qualities, an incredible football IQ. He was as strong as a bull, people. Okay, he may not have been the fastest linebacker, but he was one of the strongest linebackers ever. He would hit you hard. Okay, I think he had underrated speed as well, sideline to sideline. And I think that Ray Lewis, from a leadership perspective, from a resume perspective, from how good he was at his peak, from that perspective, he deserves to be on this list. Now, I hate the fact that I had to leave Bruce Smith off this list, but he's the one honorable mention I just want to talk about briefly, okay? He's the all-time sacks leader. I get that. He was an 8-time first-team All-Pro. He had a 19-year career. However, I just simply think that everyone above him has slightly better resumes or were a little bit better at their peak. It was one or the other. That's the biggest reason why he didn't make the cut. And I understand he's the all-time leader in sacks, okay, but very similar. I'll use a basketball analogy really quickly. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the all-time leader in points scored in the NBA. LeBron James might pass him eventually very, very soon. That does not mean they're a greater player all time, in my opinion, than Michael Jordan, just because I take everything into account, not just one single thing. So just because you have the most, sacks all time, the most yards all time, the most touchdowns all time, I don't just simple it down to that. I take everything into account. And I just think that if we were to tell the NFL story, I think that the 10 guys I have ahead of Bruce Smith on this list, they hold a little bit more significance to the story of the NFL. But he was an incredible player. I wanted to talk about him. Okay, everyone, I'm going to take a short break. When I return, I will give you guys the 10 best football players playing in the NFL right now. Don't go anywhere. I will be right back. All right, welcome back into the Juice Alert once again. My name is Jamon McKinney, and now I'm going to rank the 10 best football players right now heading into the 2022-2023 season. Aaron Donald is the best player in the entire NFL right now. Aaron Donald is the best football player in the NFL. Aaron Donald is the only player in the entire NFL I would rate a 99 overall. Aaron Donald is essentially flawless as a player. He is playing his position at the highest level among any player in comparison to their position right now in the NFL. I firmly believe Aaron Donald should have won Super Bowl MVP when the Rams defeated the Bengals in Super Bowl 56. I believed he was robbed of Super Bowl MVP. As great as Cooper Kupp was, it was one of the all-time great defensive performances in the postseason that I, quite frankly, have ever seen. Okay? And when you look at Aaron Donald's body of work, he's played in the NFL for 8 years. Every single year, he's been a Pro Bowler. The last 7 years, he's been top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting every single year. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year award already. That's tied for the most ever. He's led the NFL in sacks back in 2018. He had 20 and a half sacks as a defensive tackle, people. He has incredible size, strength, speed. He is impossible to game plan for. You absolutely have to double and sometimes even triple team this guy just to neutralize him. And that allows for other guys to play their positions at a higher level because so much attention is being drawn to Aaron Donald. He's the best player in all of football right now. Number 2 is Patrick Mahomes. Incredible arm talent. He's an incredibly talented quarterback. He's in the conversation for most talented quarterback to ever play the game of football. His ability to scramble around in the pocket and buy time and keep his eyes down the field is probably the best in the entire NFL right now. The only guy that would rival him too in that regard is Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is a little bit older. Patrick Mahomes is still at the peak of his prime. He's still very young. The last 4 years, he's won a Super Bowl. He's been to multiple Super Bowls. He's won a league MVP. Every year that he started up to this point, and it's only been 4 years, but in those 4 years, he's been in the AFC Championship game every single year. And I think that his incredible leadership qualities are definitely the underrated factor that doesn't get talked about enough. He's very good at coming from behind and stealing victories. He overcomes adversity very well. His team rallies around him. He's the second best player in the NFL right now. Derrick Henry, to me, is the best running back in the entire NFL right now. He's the third best player in all of football. There might be more running backs out there that are more complete than Derrick Henry. For example, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey. Those guys provide more in the passing game, you know. However, that does not make them better than Derrick Henry. I'm sorry. In the last 4 years, how can you argue any other running back being better than Derrick Henry? Now, again, Jonathan Taylor is coming. I said Jonathan Taylor had the potential to be the next Adrian Peterson once he was drafted coming out of Wisconsin, but Jonathan Taylor's only had one elite season. Up to this point, Derrick Henry's body of work is better than Jonathan Taylor and better than any running back going forward right now if we're kind of somewhat being prisoners of the moment, okay? This guy is able to get 25 to 30 carries week in and week out and put your entire offense on his back. His ability to break tackles is something that is really uncanny to me. He makes something out of nothing consistently. You know, even when guys, you know, kind of have him bobbled up, Derrick Henry's always running forward. He's always improving his offensive line. And he has incredible speed in the open field, people. He's super hard to tackle. He's almost impossible to stop in the red zone. I mean, if you needed a running back to score from the 1 yard line or you're going to die, life on the line, money on the line, I'm giving that football to Derrick Henry because I believe he's the best running back in the entire NFL. Number 4 for me is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers has a legitimate argument for number 1 on this list. He just won back-to-back league MVPs. He's a 4-time MVP winner for his career. Only Peyton Manning has won more MVPs than Aaron Rodgers in NFL history. For my money, Aaron Rodgers is the most talented quarterback to ever play the game of football. I know Tom Brady has a better overall career resume than Aaron Rodgers. He ranks higher all the time. But if we're talking right now, I think that Aaron Rodgers edges out guys like Tom Brady, guys like Josh Allen, guys like Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. Maybe in a year or two, we'll be saying Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert are above Aaron, but not right now. I think Aaron Rodgers is the most accurate thrower of the football in the NFL and really in NFL history. His ability to not throw interceptions is the best I've ever seen. And we saw him pretty much just carry the Green Bay Packers this past year once again through injuries to the offensive line, the wide receiver, the defense. Green Bay still found a way to win 13 games and get the number 1 seed despite being one of the most injury-riddled teams all year. I will say Aaron is a little bit more scheme dependent than he has been in years past where he could just take over with his physical tools, 4, 5, 6 years ago, but he is definitely still deserving of being on this list. The best defensive player in the NFL, not named Aaron Donald, is TJ Watt. He just won Defensive Player of the Year. It was well deserved. I felt he should have won Defensive Player of the Year over Aaron Donald a year ago as well. He's a game changer. He gets a ton of sacks. He forces fumbles. He's great on third down. Impossible to block one-on-one. Back-to-back years, he's led the NFL in sacks and tackles for a loss. He has incredible versatility. I think TJ Watt deserves the 5 spot. Now, Trent Williams has been argued to be, by some, as the best player in the entire NFL of recent. I disagree, but he definitely deserves to be on my list. I have him at the number 6 spot. Okay, he's the best run blocker in the entire NFL. Now, he's not the best pass blocker, but he is still elite in that category. He rarely gets beat. He has incredible size and strength. He's very intelligent. And you can drop Trent Williams into any scheme, and he is going to elevate your offensive line and elevate your offense and protect the blind side of a quarterback. I also believe if you moved him to guard or right tackle, he could play that position at a very high level as well. Trent Williams, to me, is the best offensive lineman going right now. Heading into 2022, 2023, he gets the 6th spot for me. The best wide receiver in the entire NFL is Tyreek Hill, people. And I know this is going to be a very, very hot take for some people, but let me make the argument. Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the entire NFL. He's the ultimate game changer. You cannot simply game plan for Tyreek Hill's speed. You just can't do it because you can't teach the speed that he has. A 1 or 2 yard pass to Tyreek Hill can turn into an 80-yard touchdown instantly if your defense makes a mistake. Tyreek Hill is great in the quick game. He can turn 1 to 2 yard passes into big gains. He's super duper versatile. You can move him around in the slot. He's able to beat man coverage on the outside, one-on-one. He's gotten a lot better at winning 50-50 balls. He does occasionally drop a pass or two, but, that's not the worst thing in the world when you're making so many big plays. And I will say, Tyreek Hill is probably arguably the best deep threat in the entire NFL. I don't think that's without a question. No wide receiver right now today keeps defensive coordinators up at night more than Tyreek Hill. Even in a down year, Tyreek Hill still had over 1,000 yards and over 100 catches, man. The attention he draws is really, really crazy, and it allows for other guys to get other opportunities because the attention is drawn to Tyreek Hill so much. I think Tyreek Hill is, without a doubt, the best wide receiver in the entire NFL. I know some people are going to argue for Davante Adams, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp has only had one elite season. Davante Adams, to me, is not quite as talented as Tyreek Hill from a game-changing perspective. Like Davante Adams, he'll catch a lot of passes, but it's a lot of jabs. Not a whole lot of home runs. The big play threat ability of Tyreek Hill outweighs the big play threat ability of a guy like Davante Adams. I know that Tyreek Hill has played with Patrick Mahomes of recent, but Patrick Mahomes does not defy who Tyreek Hill is. Tyreek Hill was a Pro Bowler even before Patrick Mahomes got to Kansas City. He can work with any type of quarterback. I expect his production to not drop off, even with Tua Tagovailoa, who I really don't believe in being his quarterback. But yeah, I think Tyreek Hill is firmly the 7th best player in the entire NFL. As of recent, he hasn't had quite the best season to warrant putting him in the top 5, but he definitely has an argument for the top 5 just based off of impact and talent alone. But for now, I have him at the number 7 spot. Travis Kelce, in a down year, had 92 catches, over 1,000 yards, and 9 touchdowns. To me, he's the 8th best player in the entire NFL. For the better part of a half decade, Travis Kelce has been the best tight end in the entire NFL. We are talking route running, finding soft spots in the defense. There's no one better at consistently getting open at the tight end position than Travis Kelce. He kind of reminds me of Jason Witten in a way, where Jason Witten just somehow, some way, always found a way to get open. But Jason Witten didn't have the big play ability that Travis Kelce provides you. Travis Kelce is able to break tackles. He's able to run down the field and beat man covers consistently. He has good speed in the open field. He is super duper reliable. He's a great red zone threat. He's the best tight end in the entire NFL. It's been that way for the past couple of years. For all you George Kittle fanboys out there, I understand George Kittle as a talent is very comparable to Travis Kelce, but from a production and durability standpoint, Kittle doesn't hold a candle to what Travis Kelce provides you. In a couple of years, maybe Kittle can overtake Travis Kelce, but for now, Travis Kelce to me is a top 10 player in the entire NFL. I have him at the number 8 spot. The best edge rusher not named TJ Watt in the entire NFL is Myles Garrett. For a while, I was of the belief that Myles Garrett was better than TJ Watt. And when it's all said and done, who knows? Maybe Myles Garrett can surpass TJ Watt on the all-time list of defensive players. It'll be very interesting 10 to 15 years from now when they're both done playing who will rank higher. But for right now, I think TJ Watt has proven to have the better career. He's proven to be better right now. But I don't want to make this a Watt versus Garrett comparison. I just want to say quickly for my reasoning as to why I have TJ where I have TJ and where I have Myles where I have Myles. The last 3 years, TJ Watt's been more productive, he's been more durable, and he's the more versatile player too. You can move TJ Watt around a little bit better than Myles Garrett. That's my opinion, however, and I think that opinion can be backed up with some facts through watching film and observing things, but Myles Garrett, he's the 9th best player in the NFL. He has great size, great power, great finesse moves. I mean, he's what a number 1 overall pick embodies. Outside of Aaron Donald and TJ Watt, there's not a better defensive player in the NFL, at least as I speak today, heading into 2022, 2023, than Myles Garrett. He looks like he's been built from a lab. He's incredible. He's the 9th best football player right now. Derwin James is the best safety in the entire NFL. Now, I understand that he's very, very injury prone and he's missed a ton of games. So if you want to take into account the durability factor and say you're disqualifying Derwin James because he hasn't played enough games of recent, Okay, you kind of got me right there. But I'm taking into account what I see on the field when you actually play. And when I'm evaluating what Derwin James brings to the table, there is simply not a more complete safety in the NFL right now, and not a more versatile safety. And really, he's one of the most versatile defensive players in the entire NFL, point blank, period. This guy can line up at cornerback, middle linebacker, free safety, strong safety. I've seen the Chargers rush this guy off the edge as a pass rusher. The Chargers defense, with and without him, I mean, the statistics speak for themselves. The Chargers last year, in a game that Derwin James didn't play versus the Houston Texans, they gave up over 200 yards rushing to the Houston Texans, people. Think about that. So, to me, Derwin James, incredible speed, incredible instincts, always has a knack for where the ball is. You know, he has incredible ball skills. He's a great run defender. What does Derwin James not do well? I mean, I don't think I'm crazy for having him ranked as the 10th best player in the entire NFL. If you want to knock him for his durability concerns, that's fine. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to rank the player based on where I would rank them, based on their production when they're on the field. Okay, once again, I am back, and now we are going to rank the 10 greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. Now, as you're going to see on your screen, if you're watching here on YouTube, these are the 10 guys I have. Number 1, Tom Brady. Number 2, Joe Montana. Number 3, Peyton Manning. Number 4, John Elway. Number 5, Aaron Rodgers. Number 6, Brett Favre. Number 7, Dan Marino. Number 8, Drew Brees. Number 9, Johnny Unitas. Number 10, Otto Graham. Those are my 10 guys right here. And I'm just going to kind of give a summary as to how I have these guys ranked and where I ranked them and kind of what I took into account. First of all, it's pretty clear to me that Tom Brady and Joe Montana are the 2 greatest quarterbacks of all time. I have Brady ranked number 1. I have Joe Montana ranked number 2. Simply put, their overall resumes are the best ever at the quarterback position. They are the 2 most accomplished quarterbacks ever. And I know everyone gets enamored with talent and how pretty it looks when you throw the football. Oh, Aaron Rodgers, Dan Marino, Patrick Mahomes. You know, I get it. I understand. Talent is definitely part of the equation, okay? How talented are you? But in the end, what actually matters when taking into account your overall resume when we're doing GOAT debates and GOAT conversations is what did you actually accomplish, okay? Michael Phelps probably is the most talented swimmer of all time. Wouldn't it be kind of weird if Michael Phelps only had 1 gold medal in his career to show for it? I mean, think about it, people. That's essentially what you're saying if you think Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback of all time. He's only got 1 Super Bowl. As great as Aaron Rodgers is, and he's in my top 5, he's only got 1 Super Bowl win. Dan Marino, he's on my list. He can't be in the GOAT conversation quite yet just because, well, really ever, because you never won a Super Bowl, Dan Marino. 7 is as high as you can go. That's about as high as you can go. Tom Brady and Joe Montana, I think their best qualities are their ability to come from behind and their ability to be clutch when it matters most. They're the 2 best leaders ever. When the moment was the highest, when the stakes were the highest, they constantly elevated under pressure. Now, I would argue Montana more times than not actually elevated under pressure better than Tom Brady. But Tom Brady's been doing it simply much more longer than Joe Montana. I think that actually Tom Brady is a little bit bigger, a little more, bigger, has more size, can play within the pocket just a little bit better than Joe Montana can. So the difference is Brady simply just outlasted Montana. And not to mention Brady's best season, where he threw 50 touchdowns, was better than Montana's best season. Now, when it comes to Peyton Manning, and last thing but not least, Brady has more MVPs, more yards than Montana. Brady's the best, but Montana's second. Peyton Manning, number 3 on my list. The most impressive thing about Peyton Manning's resume is he's a 7-time first-team All-Pro. 7 times, voters said, within this given season, Peyton Manning's the best quarterback going. That's incredible. Folks, Peyton Manning, as I speak today, has 5 league MVPs. More than Tom Brady, more than Aaron Rodgers, more than Brett Favre, more than Drew Brees, more than Ben Roethlisberger, okay? All guys that played in his era, okay? He had arguably the greatest regular season ever in 2013, throwing 53 touchdowns. He's one of the smartest quarterbacks from a football IQ perspective to ever play the game of football. 43 comebacks in his career, 54 game-winning drives. So why is Peyton Manning not quite the greatest quarterback of all time? Peyton Manning is 14-13 in the playoffs. That's a pretty pedestrian record compared to the Bradys and Montanas of the world, okay? And before Peyton Manning's final season in Denver, and really the final season of his career, he was a below 500 quarterback in the playoffs. 9 times Peyton Manning was one and done in the playoffs. So that's where I have to knock him. However, he did win 2 Super Bowls and one each with a different franchise. One with Denver and one with Indianapolis. That's got to count for something. He's a number 3 for me. John Elway is incredibly underrated. He's a number 4 for me. This is a guy that got to 5 Super Bowls in his career, was able to win 2 of them. He's one of the best athletes at the quarterback position we've ever seen. He had unbelievable arm talent. I know his numbers aren't quite as great as a Rodgers, as a Dan Marino, but this guy was one of the clutchest quarterbacks of all time, one of the greatest leaders, and one of the most talented guys at the position. He's been to 5 Super Bowls, and I think the statistics speak for themselves as well. I think Elway, at some point, you could have made the argument he maybe was the best quarterback in the entire NFL as well. And that's despite playing in an era with Dan Marino, Brett Favre, and Joe Montana. Aaron Rodgers, for me, is at number 5, and I don't think he's going to climb any higher unless he wins a second Super Bowl or maybe another Super Bowl after that in his career. He has a very similar resume to Peyton Manning. 4 MVPs. I'd argue he could have more MVPs to his resume. Aaron Rodgers is top 5 all-time in touchdowns. He's going to finish top 5 all-time in yards. He's going to finish top 5 all-time in passer rating. His touchdown to interception ratio is off the charts. He's the most talented quarterback to ever walk planet Earth, in my opinion. He's been able to consistently carry average to below average rosters in Green Bay, but he only has 1 Super Bowl win. So until Aaron Rodgers shows that he can, provide an encore to his only Super Bowl win, I think number 5 is as high as I can put him. But he's incredibly talented, and I think that he has done so much in the NFL. And when you tell the NFL story, you have to include Aaron Rodgers. Brett Favre, to me, is at number 6. At one point, Brett Favre won 3 straight league MVPs. At one point, he was arguably the best player in the entire NFL. He was able to get to 2 Super Bowls. He won one of them. You can argue Brett Favre has the strongest arm in NFL history. That's how talented of an arm he had. He was also super durable. Never missed games in his prime. He's the all-time interception leader, however. That's got to knock him. I can't overlook that. Favre's best quality was he was not afraid to lose games. But more times than not, that also led to a bunch of mistakes in big, high-leverage situations and really just some irresponsible mistakes and interceptions. So Favre, he's at number 6. I think that that's fair. Dan Marino. This is as high as I can put Dan Marino. He's in the conversation for most talented quarterback ever, but he never won a Super Bowl. So it's kind of a disqualifier for him being in my top 5 of all time. If you've never won a Super Bowl, I can't justify putting you in the GOAT conversation. I can't justify putting you top 5 all time. It's kind of like Justin Herbert right now. I see some people ranking Justin Herbert as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, and he's never even made the playoffs yet. So until he does that, we can't have that conversation. And the legend of Dan Marino might be slightly overrated just because everyone talks about how he's so great. He's only got 1 MVP award to his name, okay? So, look, Marino, he was a transcendent thrower of the football. The talent is there. The numbers are great. He even got to a Super Bowl at one point, so I'll give him some points for that, but never was quite able to win a Super Bowl. He has a below 500 postseason record, so that's why I knock him, but he's great. He's all-time great. Drew Brees is a number 8 for me. You can argue Drew Brees should be as high as number 4 on this list. The numbers he has put up are incredible. Every single year, for about a 7 to 10 year stretch, it seemed like every single year, Drew Brees was leading the NFL in some category, whether it be touchdowns, yards, completion percentage. In fact, 7 times he led the NFL in yards, 6 times in completion percentage, 4 times in touchdowns. He played 20 years in the NFL, had incredible longevity too. The problem with Drew Brees' resume and his overall legacy is that he's a 500 quarterback in the playoffs. And at no point while he was playing was he ever the best quarterback in the NFL. That's point blank, period. Tom Brady was better. Peyton Manning was better. Aaron Rodgers was better. I'd argue Patrick Mahomes has already been better in the short time that he's played when Drew Brees played. He was able to win a league MVP. And that year, Drew Brees was second to him. So I think he's better than Brees if I'm taking him. I think Russell Wilson, his ability to carry bad defenses consistently, you can make the argument Russell Wilson is just as good as Drew Brees, at least from a talent perspective, definitely. Okay? So the fact that Drew Brees has a 500 record in the playoffs, the fact that 9 of his 20 seasons, he missed the playoffs all right, flat out together, I have to knock him. And he can't go any higher than 8 for me. He did win a Super Bowl, okay, but he never was able to win a league MVP. So that's kind of where I knock him. But Drew Brees, he's an all-time great, no doubt about it. One of the most accurate and precise quarterbacks the NFL has ever seen. The last 2 spots from me had to go to Johnny Unitas and Otto Graham. The 2 old heads right here, kind of, the guys from the 50s and the 70s, those guys still matter to me a little bit. The game was totally different back then. So how do you rank guys like Johnny Unitas and Otto Graham? I tend to look at where did you rank in your era? Because we can look at Terry Bradshaw's numbers and say, man, Terry Bradshaw, they weren't that great compared to Mahomes and Rodgers. But Bradshaw was a winner. He won multiple Super Bowls, okay? At some point, he was the best quarterback in the NFL. And Johnny Unitas, he at some point was the best at his position. 3-time MVP winner. He won 3 titles, 1 Super Bowl to go with that, okay? 4 times led the NFL in touchdown passes. That's got to count for something. And Otto Graham, to me, his resume just is a little bit worse than Johnny Unitas. He also won 3 MVPs. He made 4 first-team All-Pros. He's a 3-time champion. He once led the NFL at some point in completion percentage, passer rating, yards, and touchdowns. So his resume speaks for itself. It's just kind of hard for me to rank him because I don't think the overall talent of Otto Graham and Johnny Unitas is better than the guys above them on this list, but they definitely deserve to be here because they're trailblazers to the game and because of what they accomplished. So those are the 10 greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, in my humble opinion. All right, without further ado, enough football talk for the day. Let's dive into a little bit of basketball right here. So I am now going to rank the 10 greatest basketball players of all time. So the greatest basketball player of all time is Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Michael Jordan. Jordan, I believe, is not only arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, he's arguably the greatest athlete of all time, point blank, period. Whether you take into account athletic ability or just where someone ranks within a sport, whether you want to talk about volleyball, track and field, swimming, tennis, baseball, basketball, football, it doesn't matter. Among all the major sports, you can make the argument Michael Jordan's resume within his sport is the best of all time. He was a 6-time NBA champion, 6-time NBA Finals MVP, was undefeated in the NBA Finals, 6-0. I think Michael Jordan as an overall talent, when you take into account the skill set and just the flat-out ability to play the game of basketball, he's better than LeBron James. He's better than Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's better than Larry Bird, okay? Kobe Bryant, to me, had a couple more tricks in the bag than Michael Jordan, but I think that Michael Jordan was just flat out the better and more naturally talented player just because I think that Michael Jordan got the most out of his game compared to Kobe, and it impacted winning a lot better. Michael Jordan is the best scorer of the basketball the NBA has ever seen. And he scored very efficiently, too. Consistently shooting over 50% from the field. Had a great true shooting percentage as well. He's one of the 10 best defensive players to ever play the game of basketball, in my opinion. So not only does he have the argument for being one of, if not the best offensive player ever, he's a top 10 defensive player of all time as well. He, at one point, won a Defensive Player of the Year award. And Michael Jordan is a very underrated passer of the basketball. At one point, when he was asked to be the point guard, the true point guard for the Bulls, he consistently averaged over 8 assists per game. At least in one season he did. In the NBA Finals, the first NBA Finals in which he won versus the Lakers, He averaged 11 assists during that series versus Magic Johnson and the Lakers. He three-peated twice. At his peak, he was the best. He was the best the NBA's ever seen. Michael Jordan's number one. Number two, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The talent that is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is super underrated. Okay, this is a guy that had a 20-year career and had 19 All-Star appearances within that 20-year career. So all but one season was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar not an All-Star. Okay, he had the most unstoppable shot ever, the sky hook. He's the current all-time leading scorer in NBA history, even though LeBron James is more than likely going to pass him very, very soon. But keep in mind, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar became the all-time leading scorer without hitting a single three-point shot, which is very impressive to me. He's won the most NBA MVP awards ever in the regular season at 6. People talk about Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan has 5 MVPs. He probably definitely should have more. Not even probably, definitely should have more. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has Michael Jordan beaten that category at least, winning 6 MVPs. He's one of the best defensive players ever. At one point, he led the NFL in blocked shots 4 times. That doesn't even take into account a couple seasons where the NBA didn't even count blocked shots when Kareem was playing. In his second season ever at age 23, he won the NBA Finals MVP, averaging 32 points per game on the Milwaukee Bucks. We know what he did with Magic Johnson and the Lakers, winning multiple championships. He's good for the number 2 spot on this list. I really struggle with 3 and 4. Kobe Bryant is at number 3 for me. I'll get to who I have at number 4 in a second, that guy being LeBron James. Kobe Bryant is the most skilled basketball player in NBA history. And what do I mean by that? That means he had the most tricks in his bag, in my opinion. Like, whatever you could throw at Kobe Bryant defensively, he literally had a counter for, you know? The ability to handle the basketball, the ability to shoot, the ability to, defend at a very high level. I think Kobe Bryant as a defender was very, very underrated. I believe he was an 11-time first team all defensive player, which is amazing. I don't think that gets talked about enough. It's some crazy number like that. But Kobe Bryant as an on-ball defender, very, very underrated. And I think that he is by far and away the most skilled player of all time. I know Jordan has an argument, but Jordan was not the three-point shooter that Kobe Bryant was. Maybe Jordan never needed to be the three-point shooter that Kobe Bryant was because, well, we see the success that he had. But the point is, whatever data you want to look at, Kobe Bryant has proven he's a better three-point shooter than Michael Jordan. I think that's definitely proven. He was able to win 2 championships without Shaq, 5 championships overall. He only has 1 MVP award to his name, but 11 times Kobe Bryant finished top 5 in MVP voting. I believe he at least should have 2 MVPs to his name, maybe 3. And Kobe Bryant at one point was the best player in the league. I will say that. I think from about 2007 to roughly about 2012, you can make the argument that Kobe definitely was the best player in the league. But when he was the best player in the league, he had some rough patches. He had a first-round exit. He blew a 3-1 lead to the Suns. And again, those were some years where he did not have the support that he needed to win titles. But compared to a guy like Michael, compared to a guy like Kareem, who's won 6 MVPs, compared to Kobe's 1 MVP, the highest I could put Kobe's at 3. Okay, but yeah, that's how I feel about Kobe. Number 4, LeBron. Now, a lot of people think that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player of all time. I do not subscribe to that belief, people. I just don't. You cannot be the greatest basketball player of all time if you have a losing record in the NBA Finals. That's the reality. I think that's fair. I really do. I also believe the guys I have ahead of LeBron James are just flat out more talented. I think Kobe Bryant is a more talented basketball player than LeBron James and a better defensive player. I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is a more talented player than LeBron James and at his peak was a better defender. And I think that Michael Jordan, the resume speaks for itself. I don't even want to talk about it because I think Jordan is by far and away better than LeBron James. But when it comes to longevity, LeBron has mostly everyone beat. He's entering his 20th season in the NBA. And you can make the argument that LeBron James is still definitely a top 5 player in the game. He's going to finish top 5 all time in points and assists. It's going to be a very long time until someone reaches that milestone. Heck, maybe nobody ever will be top 5 all-time in points and assists like LeBron James. LeBron's a 4-time champion. He was able to win a championship with 3 different franchises. At some point, he definitely was the best player in basketball. You can make the argument that that fluctuates within a 5 to 7 year stretch, in my opinion, where he was clearly and by far and away the best player in basketball. Some people will argue it's a little bit longer, and I don't necessarily, throw punching bags at those people. But, the point is, I think that number 4, based on my criteria, is a more than fair ranking for LeBron James, who to me is the 4th greatest basketball player of all time. And he definitely could continue to move up on this list because I think LeBron, if he wants to, he could play for another 5 years. How good will he be during that stretch? We'll see if he decides to play that long. Magic Johnson, for me, is the number 5 best player of all time, the 5th greatest player of all time. He's easily the best passer of all time, in my opinion. Just had a knack for distributing the basketball to his teammates. He's one of the greatest leaders ever for his career. He shot 52% from the field. And I'll just give you a little summary of Magic Johnson that should speak for itself. A 13-year career, 9 NBA Finals appearances, 9 top 3 MVP finishes, 3 MVPs won, 12 All-Star appearances, 5 championships won, with 3 NBA Finals MVPs during that stretch. That's good for being the 5th best player of all time. I just don't think I can put Magic Johnson any higher just because from a talent perspective, the guys I have above him are better and they have better longevity than Magic Johnson. Number 6, Larry Bird. At one point, Larry Bird won 3 straight MVPs. He was clearly the best player in basketball at one point. He and Magic Johnson traded that title for a very long time, for about a decade. He's a 3-time champion, 2-time Finals MVPs. I'd argue outside of Steph Curry, Ray Allen, and maybe Klay Thompson, who's a better shooter of the basketball than Larry Bird all time? Kyle Korver, maybe, but that's about it. I think that Larry Bird is a top 5 shooter of all time. He was an unbelievably great passer at his peak and a great rebounder too, was consistently giving you 25 to 27 points per game each night, with 10 rebounds and 6 to 7, 8, even sometimes 9 or 10 assists. He was a willing defender as well. Not the greatest defender out there, but he definitely gave his best effort on that end. And in the biggest moments, Larry Bird was money. He rarely shrinked under pressure. He's good at number 6 on this list. Shaquille O'Neal gets the number 7 spot, a.k.a. Shaq. At Shaq's peak, he has the argument for being the most dominant basketball player to ever walk planet Earth. Shaq was able to win 3 Finals MVPs at one point, and that includes a performance at one point in the NBA Finals where he averaged 38 points per game with 16 rebounds per game in his first ever NBA Finals. And that's shooting 50 to 60% from the field most nights. His efficiency was off the charts. He was a big part of the Miami Heat winning a championship when Dwayne Wade led them to a championship and won Finals MVP. And at one point, Shaq was the best player in the game. For about a 3 to 4 year stretch, he was that guy that had the title of best player in the world. That counts for something. Tim Duncan is at number 8 for me. Initially, I had Tim Duncan rated number 10 on my list. But after thinking this over and really truly evaluating his resume with another full glance, I came to the conclusion that I had to put him higher. First of all, Tim Duncan has 15 all-defensive selections to his resume. That's the most all-time. 15 times he was all-defense. Most all-time, like I said. Never once in Tim Duncan's career did he lead a team that missed the playoffs. He never missed the playoffs in his entire career. And Tim Duncan played forever, people. Okay? He's a 5-time champion, the ultimate model of consistency. He was able to win 2 league MVPs in his career. And for about a 4 year stretch, maybe a 3 to 4 year stretch, Tim Duncan had an argument for best player in the game. So you cannot tell the story of the NBA without mentioning Tim Duncan's name, I should say. 5 championships with the Spurs, 6 championship appearances. If it were not for LeBron James and Ray Allen's greatness, he would be 6-0, arguably maybe in championship games. And the Spurs, ever since Tim Duncan has left, they haven't been the most iconic franchise out there. So Tim Duncan at number 8 for me. Now, Hakeem Olajuwon at number 9. I believe Hakeem is better than Tim Duncan. But I think Tim Duncan's resume is better than Hakeem's resume. And when I'm telling the story of the National Basketball Association, I think Tim Duncan ranks higher. However, Hakeem Olajuwon is arguably the best defensive player to ever walk planet Earth. He's a multiple-time Defensive Player of the Year award winner. Incredible combination of size, speed, agility, and instincts on the defensive side of the basketball and really on the offensive end as well. He was very underrated as a scorer, consistently averaging 25 to 27 points per game in his prime. He won 2 championships at one point. I'd argue during those 2 years, he was the best player in the NBA, considering that Michael Jordan was in retirement. Hakeem Olajuwon, very underrated, and the fact that he's only won 2 championships, I can only put him so high, but he deserves to be at number 9 for me. Wilt Chamberlain had to be on this list, people. He simply put has just so many records, man. The records that he holds are off the charts. Any record with significance that is of positivity when it comes to basketball, Wilt Chamberlain has his name to it, I guarantee you. Whether it be scoring, rebounding, blocking shots, minutes per game played. Wilt Chamberlain's name is going to be right there, man. He's a career 30-point-per-game scorer. At one point, he averaged 50 points per game in a season. Now, the downside to Wilt is, in the playoffs, his points per game dipped significantly. It went from 30 points per game in the regular season to 24 points per game in the postseason. But he still was able to win 2 championships. And I'm sorry, people. I think from an individual talent perspective, he's better than Bill Russell. Just because Bill Russell's team did better than Wilt Chamberlain's team, that doesn't mean that Bill Russell's automatically the better player, okay? Now, if you want to make the argument that because Bill Russell was better than Wilt, he has because Bill has more championships than Wilt, that's a direct correlation to him being a better player than Wilt. If you want to argue that, fine. I'm not going to do that. I think Bill Russell is one of the most overrated players of all time. Rest in peace to him. He definitely is getting his flowers from me because I believe Bill Russell is the greatest winner, not just in basketball history, but sports history, but from a talent perspective and from a production standpoint, he doesn't match up to make my top 10. But those are the 10 guys that I believe are the 10 greatest basketball players of all time. Okay, so let's get to the 10 greatest Major League Baseball hitters of all time to wrap up the show right here. Let's go 1 through 10. The greatest hitter of all time is Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron, to me, is the real home run king, not Barry Bonds. Because one guy clearly took steroids and had his numbers inflated. Meanwhile, the other guy did not need steroids to break home run records. Barry Bonds cheated, flat out. And Barry Bonds only finished his career, despite cheating and taking steroids, he only finished his career with 7 more home runs than Hank Aaron. So what does that tell you, people? That tells you Hank Aaron's a better pure hitter than Barry Bonds. Now, I get it. Hank Aaron only has 1 MVP award to his name. However, 7 times he finished top 3 in MVP voting, and 13 times he finished top 5 in MVP voting. So you can argue he should have way more MVPs than he had. I think that a little bit of, racial bias may have played into that towards other players, but I'm not going to get into that. That's beside the point. He's the all-time leader in RBIs. When I look at you as a hitter, are you driving in runs? Are you consistently bringing and producing runs to my lineup? I think that has to be taken into account. And Hank Aaron, during his 20-year career, had more walks than strikeouts. Very impressive. He's the greatest baseball player of all time to me, if I were to give someone that title. And so by default, he's the greatest hitter. Babe Ruth is number 2 for me. He gets a lot of flack for the competition that he faced, but what can you say? I don't want to rank a guy. I don't want to debunk the argument for Babe Ruth just because of the era that he played in. Where did you rank in your era? Babe Ruth was by far and away the best player of his era. 12 times he led the majors in home runs. For his career, he has a 342 batting average, which is pretty insane considering the fact that he was known as a power hitter, but he also hit very well for average. I think Babe Ruth is a trailblazer. He deserves to be number 2 on this list. Barry Bonds at number 3. Now, I am taking into account that Barry Bonds did take steroids. Look, taking steroids doesn't guarantee anything because you ultimately have to still put the barrel to the baseball. You still have to have the vision and the timing and the skill to make contact with the ball. So I got to give Barry Bonds a lot of credit. And at the time in which he took steroids, everyone was taking them. So I understand why he took the steroids. And let's be real. When he took the steroids, when everyone else was doing it as well, no one came close to having the statistical dominance that Barry Bonds had. And by the way, before Barry Bonds took steroids, he had over 400 home runs, nearly 2,000 hits, and a 290 batting average. So even before he took steroids, he was a Hall of Famer. I would vote him into the Hall of Fame. At his peak, no one was arguably more dominant than Barry Bonds. He had just such a great eye for the baseball. He's the all-time leader in walks, which speaks for his eye for the ball, in my opinion. So yeah, Barry Bonds for me is at number 3. Ted Williams is at number 4. I wanted to put him higher. I just think the guys above him had peaks that were just as great, if not better. Even if you want to make the argument that Ted Williams' peak was higher or just as higher than those guys, the guys above him did it for much longer than him. But I think that Ted Williams has the argument for the most well-rounded hitter to ever play the game of baseball. He 2 times, not just once, but twice, won the Triple Crown, which means he led the entire majors in home runs, batting average, and RBIs. That's got to count for something. There's a reason that there's a book out there called The Science of Hitting that was inspired by Ted Williams. He's the last player to hit for a batting average of 400. That was over 80 years ago, people. I don't think it's ever going to be done ever again. So Ted Williams, he's at number 4 for me. Albert Pujols is at number 5 for me. And I stand by this very strongly. What has Albert Pujols not accomplished? He's a 3-time league MVP. He's won a batting title. He's won an RBI title. He's been a home run champion. There are several years where he nearly won the Triple Crown. Like, for example, Miguel Cabrera found a way to win a Triple Crown award, which speaks to how great Miguel Cabrera was. But Miguel Cabrera's best statistical season is not better than Albert Pujols' best statistical season. So just unfortunately for Albert Pujols, a year in which he had an unbelievable statistical season, he just didn't quite lead the MLB in a certain category to allow him to get a Triple Crown. But he's top 3 all-time in RBIs, top 10 all-time in hits. He's top 5 all-time in home runs. And for about a 5-year stretch at his peak, he was the best player in the game of baseball. I know we're talking hitter right here, but you can make the argument he was the best hitter as well. The last decade, he hasn't had the highest batting average, however, so I got to knock him for the fact that he did kind of fade away from a production standpoint over time. But Albert Pujols is the top 5 hitter of all time. I think the numbers speak for itself. I think his performance at his peak speaks for itself. His ability to just hit for average and power and not strike out a ton and draw walks speaks for itself. Yeah, I think Albert Pujols, he's in my top 5. Willie Mays, for me, is at number 6. He's one of only 3 players to have, for their career, a batting average of 300 to go along with 500 homers and 3,000 hits, pardon me. He just naturally had a very incredibly powerful swing. The ball jumped off his bat when he made good contact with it. The problem that I have with Willie Mays is, well, really not even a problem. The real debate I had was Willie Mays' resume good enough to make him a top 5 hitter of all time? And obviously not, because I have Albert Pujols slightly ahead of him. I just think Pujols at his peak was better. I think that Pujols' longevity stacks up pretty well, if not better than Willie Mays. So that's where I draw the line for Willie Mays. He's right outside my top 5, but he's definitely a top 10 hitter of all time. Ty Cobb is at number 7 for me. He's arguably the greatest contact hitter of all time. Okay? At one point, Ty Cobb was able to win 9 straight batting titles. He won 10 batting titles overall in his career. But not to mention, for all the people that say, oh, Ty Cobb's just a contact hitter, you folks do realize that Ty Cobb is top 10 all time in runs batted in. That's very impressive for a guy that didn't hit a lot of home runs, that didn't have a whole lot of extra base hits. He has 1,900 career RBIs to his name. Now I get it. He only hit 117 home runs during his 24-year career, but based on his ability to consistently drive in runs and consistently hit for average, I think the number 7 spot is definitely more than appropriate. Stan Musial seems to be forgotten. The guy is 4th all-time in hits. He's top 10 all-time in RBIs. He has nearly 500 home runs. He was able to win 3 MVP awards with 4 second-place finishes, by the way. I think Stan Musial is very underrated as a very complete hitter. He has to be on this list for me. Miguel Cabrera gets the number 9 spot for me. This is a guy that at one point was on pace to challenge to be the greatest hitter to ever live. The first 10 to 14 years of Miguel Cabrera's career, his numbers were off the charts. He won 2 league MVPs. He won 4 batting titles. He's led Major League Baseball in home runs before. He consistently was driving in runs. He won a Triple Crown, the first Triple Crown winner in over 50 years when he did it. But the last 6 years and counting for Miguel Cabrera's career, he really has declined a ton. So that really has robbed him of some of the longevity and some of the all-time great numbers that he should have. I think injuries and just his body breaking down overall is to explain for that. But Miggy is one of only 3 players to have, for their career, a batting average of over 300, 500 home runs, and 3,000 hits. That's got to count for something. I think Miguel Cabrera's peak alone warrants discussion for him being a top 10 hitter of all time. He's hit over 500 home runs for his career, over 3,000 hits. I think he deserves to be on this list. Pete Rose gets the last spot for me on this top 10 all-time list. He's got the most hits of all time. He had a 24-year career, was the model of consistency. He never truly had a bad season up until his age 45 season, where he clearly was just, kind of washed up a little bit. He only had a batting average of 219 that year. But outside of that, Pete Rose never had a bad season. The problem with Pete Rose is, while he never truly had a bad season up until his very final season in which he retired, he doesn't have that standalone great all-time season that these other guys have. I just can't look at a single season within Pete Rose's career where I'm like, wow, compared to these other guys. So, again, all-time leader in hits, most hits of all time. He's got to be on this list, but I have him at number 10. Well, people, that's pretty much all I have right there. Thank you for tuning in today. This has been so much fun. I'm so glad that I've gotten back to creating content for you guys and getting my opinions out there. More great stuff to come. The next episode will be an episode where I break down all 30 NFL teams, all 32 NFL teams, I believe. Yes, all 32 NFL teams. I will give you guys how I believe the standings will shake up the next time around you see me. I'll give some bold predictions, a lot of football talk next episode. And I just thank you guys for tuning in. Have a God bless day, stay safe, and I'm Ghost.